Mr. Billings. She is very poor, so she doesn't really have the money to do it. So there is a class and a wealth disparity here. But yeah, the fact that she's a woman keeps her from traveling, and it still kind of does. I wanted to go over. I was in Europe for a semester and wanted to stay there and just go all over. And my mom went, "No, you are not doing that alone." Naturally, she went, "I'll come over and do it with you." She was not going to let me go off into Europe alone. And that's kind of the same thing. It's both a safety thing for her and a really what her sex allows her to be able to do that keeps her from having this freedom.
Okay, I think there's also something to be said about the fact that it would take away a lot of the liberty of it. Like, if she's being dictated by another man's expenses, where he wants to go, like what he wants to see and do, then she's just like along for the journey. And I feel like that's not what she would have wanted. Like, she wants liberty in the sense like, it's my choice to pack my bags and go to this place, and it's my expenses. I can do what I want. But if she's like marrying a man and he's like, well, we're going here and it's my money, so we're gonna do what I want, then like that the whole point of like being like having that liberty and getting that freedom is just kind of like gone.
Yeah, there is, that's a very good point, that it really wouldn't have given her liberty. It would have given her traveling, which, I would have been up for that. And I have not seen the movie Taken, but I'm not going to, now that you've said that. But yes, I think that's a really good point that I really hadn't thought of. Okay. So I'm going to move on to Thornfield and these characters that we are going to have throughout the book. In chapters 11, you really get your first impressions of Mrs. Fairfax, Adele. What do you all think of those characters?
I kind of thought as back to like the did Jane have like an active personality, like she had a fiery personality? I feel like Adele kind of fits into who Jane is, not necessarily like as witty, but like as active as Adele is. She like I think I don't know what's going on in the chat. But I feel
that's
like
okay. You can just talk about like their general, what you know about them so far. Yeah.
Yeah. So because I feel like Jane, she was forced to kind of not forced, but she acted in a way in reaction to what was going on. But Adele is able to like freely be who she is and kind of just spoiled. So I feel like if Jane was brought up in that and like Mrs. Reid's care of her other children, she might have been like Adele. So I feel like we see kind of a parallel between those two characters.
Yeah, I love that and how you put that, because Adele, we're going to see, is really a foil for what younger Jane could have been like if she had gotten anything more out of Mrs. Reid. Of course, Adele is spoiled materially, but Mr. Rochester doesn't really love her in the way that a father would. He just kind of sets her up and kind of gives her everything she needs. But we do know that he doesn't really appreciate her being there. She was just kind of forced on him, kind of like Jane was forced on Mrs. Reid. So I think that's a very good point, that she is a foil. Anything else about Mrs. Fairfax or Adele or Grace Poole is in there too?
That's actually what I was going to say about Adele, sort of. I was going to say that I kind of feel a little bit bad for her, because although she definitely has like more than Jane did, I still don't think it's like any type of ideal situation, because it's not like Mr. Rochester like cares about her really. Like, I mean, he brings her like a little present, whatever, but I mean, like, she's been torn away from like any type of parent that she would have had, anything like that. So while she definitely has it better than Jane, I still think it's interesting that like better than Jane isn't much, you know, like it still is not a great situation.
The bar is still very low. Yes, I think, and you know, the only reason that Rochester doesn't treat Adele like his daughter is because he doesn't really know if she's his daughter. She doesn't look like him. He knows that her mother wasn't very faithful to him. And so I think there is a part of him that thinks, oh, is this really my daughter? Should I attach myself to her? And really, there's no paternity test during this time. If your kid didn't look like you, who knew at this point? Which is sad, but very true.
Can I add one thing there, Miss Reid?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to anyways, Callie. Also, I don't want to overlook the fact that he takes her in, though, even though he may not treat her like a dad. That's an amazing act. I mean, there was no legal reason, no way to that's totally voluntary. So even though he does, I see that, Kelly, Shelby. Even though he doesn't have to, I mean, who would force him to do this? It's not like, I mean, that's in a different country, no paternity test. Nobody even knows about her. I mean, he could have just forgotten about her. So the fact that he does take her in as his ward is that says something about his character, even though maybe not as much as we would like it to say, but it's certainly, that's pretty huge.
Well, and even though he doesn't give her like the paternal love that we like might want him to, he still provides her with like Sophie and Jane. Like, he's paying their expenses and they're like literally giving her the world. Like, Jane is teaching her Miss